Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are opening a box, and I don't mean that metaphorically well, I do, but the author we're discussing actually starts there. We are opening a wooden box full of wire, puppets, and dust.
It really sounds like we're about to clean out a Victorian attic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But we're actually stepping into one of the most, I think, cynical, modern, and frankly terrifying novels of the 19th century.
We're talking about Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray, and I think for most people, if they know the title, it probably conjures up an image of a glossy magazine or maybe a vague idea of a girl in a Regency dress trying to marry a rich guy.
Or they saw a movie adaptation once.
Right, and they remember the costumes.
Which is a tragedy, honestly, because the book itself is a monster. It's a beast. It's not just a romance or some kind of costume drama. It's a satire that bites so hard it actually draws blood. And it opens with this incredibly strange prologue.
Before the curtain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's called Before the Curtain. And Thackeray doesn't start with chapter 1. He starts by introducing himself not as the author, but as the manager of the performance.
That's such a specific choice of words. The manager.
It's crucial. It frames the entire massive novel, and we're talking, almost 900 pages.
900 pages, yeah.
As a puppet show. He's sitting on the stage, looking down at this thing he calls the fair. And his description of this fair isn't the cotton candy and Ferris wheels version we might expect.
No, not at all. The source material highlights this so vividly. He says people are eating, drinking, cheating, fighting.
And my favorite detail, bucks are ogling the women. It's so seedy.
It's visceral. You can almost smell it. It smells like stale beer and desperation. And the manager, our narrator, looking down at this chaos, isn't happy. He isn't enjoying the show.
Not at all. He describes his own feeling as profound melancholy.
That's the hook right there. Why would the puppet master feel sad about his own show?
Well, he tells us why. He says the fair is not a moral place, certainly, nor a merry one, though very noisy. And that distinction he makes between noisy and merry feels incredibly sharp.
It feels very current. It really does. You can be at a party that's just deafeningly loud, where everyone is screaming to be heard over the music, but nobody is actually having a good time. Nobody is merry.
That's the vibe he's setting before a single character even walks onto the stage.
So that's really our mission for this deep dive.
Exactly. We want to explore why a book published way back in 1847 feels, in some ways, more modern than almost anything else from the Victorian era. Because that noise he describes, that's the sound of people trying desperately to distract themselves from a deep, profound emptiness.
So the manager looks at his puppets, who are the characters we're about to meet, these iconic figures like Becky Sharp and Amelia Sedley, and he basically says, look, watch them dance, watch them fight, but always remember, they're just wood and wire.
And eventually they all go back in the box.
It's an incredibly nihilistic opening for what's supposed to be a comedy.
And that's the lens we have to use today. We aren't just going to recount the plot of Becky Sharp climbing the social ladder. That's the surface. We need to dissect the man who wrote it, this terrifyingly modern voice that tells the story, and the wound of history that sits right at the center of the novel.
Let's start with the man himself. Because you can't really understand the bitterness of Vanity Fair without understanding that Thackeray wasn't just an observer of the precariousness of life. He was a victim of it. He lived the crash.
Oh, he really did. This is section 1 of our analysis. The man behind the masks. To understand the puppet master, you really have to look at his own scars.
He starts life as the ultimate insider, right? The source material we have notes he was born in 1811 in Calcutta.
A child of the empire. You really have to picture this context. His father was a high-ranking official in the East India Company. This is the ruling class of the ruling class. He's surrounded by servants, unimaginable wealth, the total exoticism of colonial India.
A pretty privileged start.
The most privileged. But then, like a lot of colonial children, he's shipped off.
Back to England for a proper education.
Exactly. Sent back for the classic gentleman's education. He goes to Charterhouse School, then on to Cambridge. He's on the conveyor belt to success. And when he comes of age, the golden ticket arrives. He inherits a fortune.
20,000 pounds.
Which in the 1830s it's generational wealth. That is, never work a day in your life money.
That's buy a country estate and hunt foxes for 40 years money.
Precisely. He was set for life.
And then by 1833, it's just gone.
Poof. Evaporated?
I was looking at the notes on this. How on earth do you lose 20,000 pounds that quickly? It wasn't just one bad bet. It feels almost like he was trying to lose it.
It was a kind of perfect storm of youthful arrogance, incompetence, and just terrible luck. First, he gambled a significant chunk of it away at cards. He just had a weakness for it. And he was surrounded by Sharp's professional gamblers who saw this rich, naive kid coming a mile away.
So he was the mark. He was the sucker at the table.
He was absolutely the mark. Then he decided he wanted to be a media mogul. He invested a huge amount in a newspaper he bought called the National Standard.
I'm guessing that didn't become the New York Times?
It flopped, almost immediately. It was a total money pit. And then came the knockout blow.
The bank.
The Indian Bank, where the remainder of his capital was held, just collapsed. It failed, wiped out.
That is just devastating. So he goes from being this wealthy, Cambridge-educated gentleman on the fast track to what?
To a working stiff, a hack. And we have to be careful with that word. Today, hack sounds really derogatory, like you're a bad writer. But for Thackeray, it was a survival mode. It meant he had a right to eat. He spent a decade grinding. He wrote sketches, reviews, art criticism, parodies, literally anything to pay the rent.
This is such a crucial distinction between him and someone like Dickens, isn't it?
It's a massive difference. Dickens was a global superstar by his early 20s. He was a celebrity, a public figure, a brand. Thackeray was the guy in the background, writing under all these pseudonyms, hustling for every single paycheck, sitting in coffee houses trying to hit a deadline so he could buy dinner.
That has to fundamentally change the way you view society. To have known what it's like in the VIP section and then to suddenly be the guy outside in the cold trying to get back in.
It creates the outsider-insider dynamic that just defines Vanity Fair. He knows how the gentlemen's clubs work because he used to belong to them. He knows the secret handshakes. But now he's looking at them with the eyes of someone who knows just how easily you can be kicked out.
He understands the precariousness of prosperity, as the source puts it.
Exactly. He knows that money isn't solid, isn't real. It's a vapor. It can be there one day and gone the next.
But the financial crash isn't even the only tragedy in the file, the personal side of his life. It seems even darker. It's actually hard to read about.
It is truly, truly heartbreaking. In 1836, he married a woman named Isabella Shaw. And by all accounts, they were young, they were in love, they had children. But in 1840, after their third daughter was born, Isabella suffered a catastrophic mental breakdown.
Do we know what it was? Was it postpartum depression?
It's likely started that way, but the sources we have indicate it became something permanent. She just lost her grip on reality completely. She became suicidal. Eventually, she had to be placed in an asylum and required round-the-clock care for the rest of her life.
Oh my God.
She actually outlived him by 30 years.
So Thackeray is effectively a widower, but he can't remarry. He's stuck in this terrible limbo.
Exactly. He's a single father raising two young daughters, writing furiously to pay for their upbringing and his wife's extensive medical bills. So when the manager talks about profound melancholy in the intro, it's not an academic exercise. He's not being poetic.
He's writing from a deep personal wound.
A wound that never healed. It explains why all the fun in Vanity Fair, all the parties and the glamour feels so hollow.
Right. He knows that even if you follow all the rules, even if you have the money and the status and the perfect family, the manager of the performance might just pull the rug out from under you for no reason at all.
You could lose your money, your mind, or your spouse in a heartbeat. Nothing is safe.
And yet, he writes a comedy. Or at least a satire.
That's the defense mechanism, isn't it? You have to laugh at the darkness so it doesn't completely crush you.
Which brings us directly to the way he tells the story. Section 2. The voice of the century. Because the narrator of Vanity Fair is arguably the most interesting character in the entire book, he's not just a camera recording events.
He's certainly the most complex. Critics always compare him to George Eliot or Dickens, but the flavor is just totally different. Dickens has this, pyrotechnic, high-energy style. He's grabbing you by the lapels and shouting the story at you.
Right. And George Eliot has this very measured, heavy moral gravitas. He's guiding you, like a professor, to a higher truth.
But Thackeray, he's the guy at the back of the room with a cocktail, watching everyone and making these incredibly snarky comments under his breath.
The notes describe him as the man of the world.
Yes. And he constantly reminds us that he knows the secrets. He knows what happens in the gentlemen's clubs after midnight. But he also knows what the servants are whispering about in the kitchen downstairs. He breaks the fourth wall constantly to give us a little wink.
There's a specific phrase used in the analysis that I love, the knowing smile.
That's the key to the whole tone. He absolutely refuses to be shocked.
Yep.
I mean, in this book, you have fraud, adultery, gambling, lying, potentially murder.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. A traditional Victorian moralist would be clutching their pearls, demanding justice, giving a long speech about sin. Thackeray's narrator treats it all with this half-amused, half-disgusted species of boredom.
It's almost a defense mechanism for her, too. It's like he's saying, oh, you're surprised he's cheating on his wife. Please, I saw this coming 3 chapters ago. Grow up.
Exactly. It's smart writing. And I use smart in the specific Victorian sense of the word. It means being socially elusive, fluid, slightly ironic. It's the tone of insider gossip. He's assuming that the reader is also an insider. He's saying, you and I, we know how the world really works. We aren't naive like those people in the other novels who actually believe in true love and happy endings.
But here's the thing that really struck me in the research. Underneath that cool guy exterior, underneath all the irony, there's that loneliness again. The outline mentions a concept that I found fascinating: modern solitude.
This is one of the most brilliant insights in the analysis by the critic Nicholas Dames. Think about the setting. It's called Vanity Fair. It's a carnival. It's full of parties, balls, dinners, battles. The book is crowded, it's noisy. But the characters are almost always fundamentally isolated.
That feels like a contradiction. How can you be isolated at a packed ball?
Well, that is the very definition of modern urban life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being surrounded by hundreds of people but having no real connection to any of them.
Can you give us an example of how that manifests in the text?
Sure. Take the character of Josh Sedley. He's this wealthy, somewhat ridiculous figure who comes back from India. He desperately wants to be a man of fashion. But Thackeray shows him dining alone at fashionable restaurants, driving his carriage alone through the park. He's performing the act of social life, but he's doing it by himself. He's eating the best food, wearing the best clothes, and absolutely nobody cares.
It's the original Instagram versus reality. The photo looks like an amazing party, but the person who took it is sitting alone on their couch.
It's precisely that. It's
Yeah.
being alone in a crowd. Or look at Amelia Sedley, the heroine. There's this recurring image of her just gazing forlornly out the window. She's trapped in her house in Russell Square, just looking out, waiting for anyone to come and rescue her. It's a posture of pure, passive longing.
There's one image from the source material that really stuck with me, though. It's about Jane Osborne. She's the spinster sister, living with her tyrannical father. And the narrator describes their drawing room. It's such a weirdly specific, haunting detail.
Ah, the chandelier.
The brown Holland bags.
It's a devastating image. The grand crystal chandelier is covered in these protective brown bags to keep the dust off. Why? Because they don't have guests. They don't have parties anymore. The room is dead. But there are mirrors on both sides of the room. So Jane Osborne is sitting there in silence, and the mirrors are reflecting these bagged chandeliers into infinity.
These endless perspectives of brown bags.
It's a perfect metaphor for her life. Preserved, covered up, unused, and infinitely, terrifyingly empty. That is the melancholy that the narrator is trying to hide with all his jokes and his worldliness. The sophistication is just a mask. We act cool and knowing to hide the fact that we are terrified of that infinite emptiness, that we might just be sitting in a room reflecting brown bags until we die.
So the narrator is basically saying, I'm going to keep talking and keep making jokes so I don't have to look at the brown bags in the mirror.
That is the psychological engine of the entire book. The noise is there to drown out the silence.
Let's shift a little bit to the construction of the novel itself. Section 3, the architecture. Because this wasn't written as a single, cohesive novel initially, was it? It wasn't like he sat down and wrote a manuscript from start to finish.
No, not at all. And this is where Thackeray's background as a hack journalist becomes a kind of superpower. For a decade, he was used to writing sketches. In the 1840s, a sketch was sort of like a blog post or a magazine column. Short, observational, usually about a specific type of person or a place.
Like his famous series, The Snobs of England.
Exactly. He wrote a whole series just defining what a snob was in all its different forms. And Vanity Fair is essentially a collection of these sketches stitched together into a single overarching narrative. It was published serially, month by month, in these little yellow wrappers. So he was writing it as he went along, responding to his audience.
The chapter titles even sound like magazine articles. How to Live Well on Nothing a Year.
Which is a great title. It's timeless.
It sounds like a clickbait article. This couple lives well on nothing a year. Here's their secret.
It essentially is. It's a satirical how-to guide on surviving on credit, which is exactly what Becky and her husband Rawdon do. They don't pay for anything. They charm the butcher, they cheat the landlord, they live on air. Or another chapter, How Captain Dobbin Bought a Piano. These chapters can almost stand alone as little social essays.
And because he was a parodist, someone who spent years mimicking other writers, he changes the style constantly. The source calls it ventriloquism, which is a perfect description.
He's a brilliant mimic. He doesn't just describe characters, he inhabits their linguistic styles. So when Sir Pitt Crawley, who is a baronet, a landed aristocrat, writes a letter, you'd expect it to be refined and elegant. You'd expect Jane Austen prose. But it's filled with spelling errors and vulgarity and just bad grammar.
Because he's an uneducated boor, even though he's rich and has a title.
Right, he's basically a farmer with a fancy name. But then when Rawdon Crawley, the dashing dragoon, the soldier, writes, it's this very distinct, slangy military shorthand. Thackeray performs their voices. It makes the world feel incredibly populated and real because everyone sounds different.
But the biggest structural piece of this novel, the engine that really drives it, is the two women, the great binary, Becky Sharp versus Amelia Sedley.
This is the central contrast that defines the entire book. They start at the exact same place, Miss Pinkerton's Academy for Young Ladies, but they are destined for completely opposite paths.
Let's talk about Amelia first. In most Victorian novels, she would be the hero, wouldn't she?
Oh, absolutely. She is the good girl. She is the passive model of genteel Victorian femininity. She is everything a woman was supposed to be. Sweet, submissive, gentle, endlessly devoted.
There's a detail about her education that just sounds like torture. The backboard.
Oh, the backboard, yes. The headmistress, Miss Pinkerton, recommends she use a backboard for 4 hours every day to acquire dignified deportment.
Can you even imagine that? 4 hours a day strapped to a flat board to make sure you stand up straight? It's horrifying.
It's a perfect symbol for her character, though. She is stiff, constrained, literally formed by external pressure. The narrator calls her a parasite clinging to an oak. She can't stand on her own. She needs a husband, a father, or a brother to define her existence. She's good, yes, but she is static. She never really changes.
And then there's Becky.
And then there's Becky, the revolutionary eruption.
Miss Pinkerton hates her, just despises her.
Loathes her, with a passion. When they leave school, Amelia gets this glowing letter of recommendation, this beautiful copy of Johnson's dictionary. Becky gets a job placement. She gets the cold shoulder. The principal writes a flowery billet to Amelia's parents, but Becky gets nothing but a dictionary that she immediately throws out the window.
But Becky doesn't really care. Or rather, she cares, but she turns that resentment into pure fuel.
She's a shark in a tank of goldfish. If Amelia is the passive parasite, Becky is the active predator. She has no money, no family connections. Her father was a drunk artist. Her mother was a French opera dancer, which in those days was basically code for scandalous.
She has no backboard training.
None. She has to use her wits, her charm, her ruthlessness.
And the reader is put in this really uncomfortable position. We know we should like Amelia because she's good, but Amelia is so boring.
Amelia is painfully boring. She cries a lot. She mopes. She pines. That's her entire personality.
And Becky is just fascinating.
Becky is electric.
Yeah.
She's funny. She's dangerous. She's incredibly resourceful. I mean, she throws the dictionary out of the carriage window as she leaves school. Such a punk rock move. Thackeray forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Do we actually value goodness? Or do we just prefer to be entertained?
That's the Vanity Fair test right there.
Yeah.
We claim we want morals and virtue, but we pay our money to see the wicked nobleman puppet. We want to watch Becky scheme.
Exactly. We are complicit. We find ourselves rooting for her to succeed, even when she's doing terrible things, because she's the only one with a pulse.
Now, this story doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's a historical novel. But as we get into Section 4, The Wound of History, it's clear this isn't your typical war story.
No, and this is where Thackeray does something completely revolutionary for his time. The novel is set during the Napoleonic Wars, mostly between 1813 and 1815. The Battle of Waterloo, the biggest European event of the century, happens right in the middle of the book.
And usually in a book about this era, we'd be on the front lines. We'd be in the tent with the Duke of Wellington. We'd see the strategy.
Right. But we don't see the battle. Not really.
Yeah.
We don't see the generals pointing at maps. We don't see the heroic charges and the cannon fire up close. Thackeray stays with the non-combatants. He stays in Brussels with the wives, the merchants, the gamblers, and all the people just waiting for news, terrified.
And Napoleon, the biggest figure of the age, the man the war is named after.
Thackeray dismisses him as a mute personage. Napoleon never speaks in the book. He's just this offstage force of nature that completely messes up everyone's weekend plans.
This is history from below.
It is. In most historical novels of the time, like those by Sir Walter Scott, for instance, the hero meets the king, or he fights in the crucial battle. In Vanity Fair, history is just a shock from above. You can't control it, you can't influence it, you just get hit by it. It's like a weather event, like a hurricane.
There's a sentence in the book that sums this up so perfectly. The source material calls it a wonderful sentence, and it really is.
I know the one you mean. Napoleon landed at Cannes, and the funds fell, and old John Sedley was ruined.
That is just brutal. The construction of that sentence is incredible.
It's a masterpiece of grammar. Think about the conjunctions. Napoleon landed, and, it completely levels everything. The Emperor of France returning to power is given the exact same grammatical weight as the stock market dropping, which is given the same weight as a single family in London going broke.
So the tragedy isn't the fate of Europe is at stake. The tragedy is Dad lost all the money.
Exactly. For the people in the novel, the war isn't about glory or patriotism. It's about bankruptcy. It's about the price of bread. It's about whether your husband comes back in a coffin or whether you have to wear black for the rest of your life. It de-romanticizes war completely.
And what happens after the war? Because the book keeps going for years and years after Waterloo.
That's the wound. This is so critical. Usually the war ends and the story ends with a wedding. But Thackeray shows us the long, boring aftermath. After the insane excitement and terror of the war, the characters retreat into this traumatized, dull state. The source material mentions that the freewheeling life of the Regency, all the drinking, the gambling, the partying at Vauxhall Gardens, it just dies. It gets replaced by this stuffy, early Victorian propriety.
So they survived the war, but now they're just bored.
Bored and safe. But the trauma lingers under the surface. They are hiding from history. They don't want any more shocks. They just want to stay in their drawing rooms with the bags on the chandeliers. They want to be numb. It's a kind of collective PTSD that manifests as extreme, suffocating boredom.
But not everyone stays in the drawing room. One person keeps fighting, keeps scheming. Section 5. The dark side of the fair. We have to talk about Becky Sharp's descent into, well, darkness.
Becky is the exception. She doesn't retreat. She keeps pushing. She keeps climbing. She tries to break into the highest levels of the aristocracy. But as the novel goes on, she gets darker. The fun starts to curdle.
And the narrator plays the strange game with us where he claims he doesn't know everything about her.
Which is a complete lie, of course. He's the narrator. He knows everything. He just won't tell us. He deliberately keeps Becky's secrets. We don't know who her mother really was. We don't know exactly how far she went with the evil Marquis of Stein, though we can certainly guess it was transactional.
There's a metaphor the narrator uses that is just chilling. The mermaid.
It's one of the most vivid and horrifying images in the entire book. He says Becky is like a siren above the water. She's beautiful. She's singing this enchanting song. She's smiling. But if you were to look below the surface of the water,
it's a hideous tale, writhing and twirling, diabolically hideous and slimy, flapping amongst bones.
That imagery is pure Gothic horror, flapping amongst bones.
Yeah.
It's not just a fish tale, it's a monster's tale. It's something necrotic and predatory.
It's visceral. It makes me think of something from a Lovecraft story, not a Victorian novel about manners.
It suggests that underneath all the charm, underneath the wit, there is death. There's something fundamentally predatory and monstrous about her. And the narrator, very cleverly, implicates us, the readers. He suggests we want to be charmed by the beautiful top half of the mermaid. We politely ignore the slimy tail.
But I get away with it because she's so entertaining.
We do. Our politeness becomes, as the source puts it, a structure of prurience. We're enjoying the scandal a little too much.
But the tail eventually comes out of the water. We have to talk about the ending. The darkest implication of all, does she? Does she kill Just Sedley?
This is the great unanswered question of the novel. At the very end of the book, Becky, who has fallen on very hard times, gets her claws into Joe Sedley, Amelia's fat, vain, cowardly brother. He's sick, he's terrified of her, he takes out a large life insurance policy, and then he dies, and Becky gets all the money.
The text never explicitly says she murdered him.
Yeah. Thackeray's too clever for that, but he leaves these huge, glaring clues. He doesn't say she poisoned him, but look at the names of the lawyers she supposedly hires.
Burke, Thurtell, and Hayes.
To a modern reader, those are just random old-fashioned names. To a Victorian reader, those were infamous headline-grabbing murderers. Burke and Hare were the body snatchers who killed people to sell their corpses to medical schools. Thurtell and Hayes were other notorious killers. It would be like naming a law firm in a modern book. Manson, Dahmer, and Bundy.
Okay, so that's not subtle at all.
It's a neon sign. It's Thackeray screaming at us from behind the curtain, "Wake up! Look what she did!" And there's more. There's an illustration drawn by Thackeray himself of Becky playing the role of Clytemnestra in a game of charades earlier in the book.
And Clytemnestra from Greek myth
murdered her husband, Agamemnon. And in the drawing, Becky is holding a dagger. looking menacingly over her sleeping husband. Another version of the drawing has her holding a vial.
A vial of poison.
So, the verdict? Thackeray leaves it to you. He presents the two options. Either she's a maligned, lucky woman, or she's a monster.
I think the evidence points pretty strongly to monster.
It does. But here's the final brilliant twist. Even if she is a monster,
Yeah.
isn't she also kind of like Napoleon?
What do you mean by that? How is she Napoleon?
Well, think about it. She is the Napoleonic figure of the book. Napoleon was the ultimate outsider, this Corsican upstart who conquered all of Europe through sheer will, ambition, and energy. Becky is the ultimate outsider, the poor artist's daughter who tries to conquer English society through sheer will, ambition, and energy. She rises from nothing to the very top.
And the timeline of the book's publication matches up perfectly with another moment of historical upheaval.
It does. The final numbers of the book were published in 1848.
The year of revolutions.
The year Europe completely caught fire. There were revolutions in France, Germany, Italy, Austria. The Communist Manifesto was published in London just weeks before the final installment of the novel. The old aristocratic order was cracking.
So while Thackeray is writing the end of this story about the recent past, the world is exploding around him all over again.
And in the final serial number, what does he draw? He draws Becky dressed as Napoleon, selling her wares at a fair stall. In another sketch, she is looking across the English Channel with a telescope, as if planning an invasion. She represents that threatening but attractive individual energy. Society tries to crush her, but it can't quite contain her. She's dangerous. She might kill you, but my God, she's alive.
And that brings us to the outro. Because unlike a Jane Austen novel, there's no big happy wedding where everyone gets what they deserve and lives happily ever after.
No, absolutely not. Vanity Fair has no happy ending. It completely refuses to give you that satisfaction.
What's the final assessment then? What are we left with?
The novel finds no middle way. It presents you with two terrible choices. You can be like Dobbin and Amelia, good, safe, moral, but dull, paralyzed, lifeless. Or you could be like Becky, energetic, witty, successful, but criminal and ultimately empty inside.
So you can be a bored vegetable or you can be a successful shark. That's it.
That's the bleak choice Thackeray offers you. There is no perfect balance. There is no happy medium.
And the only safety, the only real peace, is in looking backward.
Nostalgia. The book ends with this overwhelming sense that the only time any of them were truly safe or happy was back at Chiswick Mall in the very first chapter, before life actually started, before all the mistakes were made.
And then the manager, the puppet master, speaks one last time.
Come, children, let us shut up the box and the puppets, for our play is played out.
It's such a final, melancholy line. Put them all back in the box. It's over. The noise stops.
And it reminds us that we are just watching a show. He breaks the illusion one final time. It's all fake.
But before we shut up our own box for this deep dive, I want to leave the listener with that provocative thought from the very beginning of the source material. It's a line from the preface. Thackeray writes, "The world is a looking glass and gives back to every man the reflection of his own face."
A mirror.
So when you look at Vanity Fair, when you look at Becky Sharp, are you judging her? Are you secretly rooting for her? Because what you see in her, the way you react to her, that might just be a reflection of your own secret ambition.
Or your own vanity.
That's a scary thought to end on.
That's Thackeray for you.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you at the next performance.
Don't forget to check your chandeliers for dust covers.